Okay, let's dive into a story that's, well, it's captivated and horrified the world. It's this tangled web of incredible wealth, unchecked power, and some of the darkest secrets imaginable. We're talking, of course, about Jeffrey Epstein.
So to really understand this, we have to go back. Picture this, it's 2005. We're in the Caribbean Sea. Blue water, sunny skies, what looks like paradise. But as we'll see, it was anything but. And right there, in the middle of all that water, is this small, very private island. It was designed to be cut off from the rest of the world. And from far away, yeah, it looked exactly like what you'd imagine a tropical paradise to be. But as you can probably guess, what was happening behind those closed doors, behind that perfect facade, was a completely different story, a truly horrifying one. And that really brings us to the core question, the one that kicks this whole thing off. What was actually going on there?
All right, so let's get into it. First up, an island of secrets. We're going to look at this huge gap between the public facade and the hidden reality.
When you start digging into the court documents and the investigations, the picture they paint it's just chilling. This place, this so-called luxury paradise, was actually a hub for human trafficking and sexual exploitation. The stories are heartbreaking. Young girls lured there with promises of jobs, of money, only to find themselves completely trapped. It was like a world where law, consent, and justice just didn't exist.
And who was at the very center of this whole nightmare? Jeffrey Epstein. Now, publicly, if you asked anyone, he was this billionaire financier, a real social insider, part of the global elite. But yeah, that was only half the story. Not even.
It's like there were two completely different people. On one hand, you've got this public image he worked so hard to create, the genius money guy, the guy who knew everyone. And on the other hand, you have the hidden reality, the one investigators started piecing together, the guy who was the mastermind of a criminal network, a predator.
And for years, all of this was happening way, way in the shadows. But then came 2019, and boom, everything blew up. Epstein gets arrested on federal charges for sex trafficking minors. And just like that, what was a dark secret became a massive global scandal. But it just makes you wonder, right? How does someone like this get so powerful? That's the real question. And it takes us right into our next part, his unlikely ascent from a classroom all the way to Wall Street.
Okay, so when you look at where he came from, it makes the whole story even more baffling. He was born in Brooklyn in 1953 to a totally normal middle-class family. His dad worked for the government, his mom was a school assistant. There was no big family fortune, no silver spoon, nothing to explain how he became, well, him.
And this is where we hit the first big puzzle, one that investigators have obsessed over. How does a college dropout, with no finance degree by the way, somehow get a job at a top investment bank? It just doesn't happen.
So back in the early 70s, he's teaching math and physics at this really prestigious private school, and that's where he gets his first little taste of the elite world. But then in 1976, he just quits and makes this insane leap to Wall Street. To this day, nobody has a clear public explanation for how he pulled that off.
And that bizarre career move? It leads us right into the second huge mystery of his life, the invisible fortune. Really, where did all that money come from? Think about it. With most financiers, you can track their wealth. You see public companies, stock holdings, there's a paper trail. With Epstein, it was the total opposite. His companies were a black box. His money was hidden away in private trusts and shell corporations. He always claimed he only worked for a few secret, ultra-rich clients. And this level of secrecy, it wasn't just him being weird. It was his entire business model.
The big turning point seems to be his connection with the billionaire Leslie Wexner. This relationship apparently gave Epstein just unbelievable financial access. We're talking, and get this, power of attorney over Wexner's entire massive fortune. Just pause and think about that. That's not just being a money manager. That's being handed the legal keys to someone's entire financial kingdom. And that's the thing. Unlike all the other big shots, there's no famous company he built, no huge IPO, no legendary stock market win that you can point to. Nothing to explain his hundreds of millions of dollars. The private jets, the islands, the math, it just never added up. So if he wasn't running a normal business, then what on earth was he doing? And this brings us to a really compelling theory, that his real business was the business of connections.
A lot of investigators and journalists think the best way to describe him is as a power broker. And that's not just some fancy job title. What it means is that his actual product wasn't making money for people. It was controlling information, making the right introductions, and most importantly, promising total privacy. And he used all that to get leverage and influence over some of the most powerful people on the planet.
You could almost break his method down into a few steps, right? Step 1, figure out what the super elite need more than anything. The answer? Absolute privacy and exclusive access. Step 2, give them those things. Create these private spaces far away from prying eyes. Step 3, make yourself the gatekeeper. Control who meets who knows what. And finally, step 4, use that position right in the middle of everything to gain a ton of power for yourself. And his entire operation was built for exactly this. I mean, his office wasn't in some glass tower, it was a private mansion in New York. His meetings didn't happen in boardrooms, they happened on private jets and on that island. There was zero corporate transparency because, well, it wasn't a real corporation. It was something else entirely. Of course, Epstein's death in jail in 2019 didn't solve anything. If anything, it just left behind this huge cloud of unanswered questions. And that's what we're going to touch on in our final section, this lingering mystery. The big questions are still out there. Was he really some kind of financial genius, or was he just a piece in a much bigger puzzle? Where did all that untraceable money really come from? How many powerful people were actually tangled up in his network? And maybe the biggest one of all, was the whole finance guy thing just a cover story for something far, far worse? And all of that leaves us with one last big question to think about. Is this whole sordid affair just the story of one man's incredibly dark secrets? Or is it the story of a system that was powerful enough to protect those secrets for a very, very long time?